What's up YouTube, it's the one and only Legend of Winning, aka Low, and I'm back with another episode of the NBA Preview. Now for those out there who missed the last episode, as always, there will be an annotation in the top right hand corner, link in the description, and if you watch the video in its entirety, not only will there be an annotation for the last episode, but also an annotation to the playlist, so you can watch all of the NBA Preview episodes and catch up to where we are right now. But on today's video, we're talking about the Miami Heat and why this team could possibly upset a couple of other teams that will make the playoffs in the Eastern Conference. Last year, the Miami Heat, they were the definition of up and down. At the beginning of the season, they had a record of 11-30, however turned it around to have a record of 30-11 towards the last 40 some games, which left them with a 500 record. This next upcoming season should be much more interesting than last year because there are a handful of players who are suffering from injuries that are back now, and it definitely comes across as if the Miami Heat are poised to have a big season. And speaking of players bouncing back and hopefully being healthy the entire season, that leads us to our clip of the day for our summer of social media.
I was telling some of the coaches on the bench, I feel great. You have those points where you jump and your knee hurts a little bit, that sort of thing throughout the year. But up to this point, I feel great. I feel light, moving great. I'm not sure if I've jumped that high on the dunk in a while, but it just felt great to be out there with the guys. That was a big step for me, just being out there in a more of a competition, and tomorrow will be even a bigger step. So it just was great for me and my journey over this past year, and I'm just happy to be doing what I'm doing.
So shout out to my man Justice Winslow. He's already played some preseason games and he is now back in the rotation, which is a great thing if you're a Miami Heat fan, because even though yes, you did not land Gordon Hayward, Justice Winslow and his ability, especially on the defensive end, should be able to provide a little bit more dynamic play on the perimeter, and they'll definitely be able to add some more games in that win column and hopefully be able to push the Miami Heat a little bit further into the playoff run and maybe upset a couple of teams like I stated before. Because when you take the time out to look at this team from a different scope, you start to realize this team is probably better than what you originally thought. So with that being said, let's take the time out to actually do so, and let's look at these depth charts and these contracts. So first, let's look at these contracts. When it comes to the new signings, shout out to the Miami Heat, because yet again, they did it. I don't understand how they do it, but they always do it, and it's almost as if Pat Riley is either A, holding a gun to some of these people's heads, or B, he's taking them to the champagne room, getting them drunk, and then having them sign these contracts, because there's absolutely positively no way that some of these players should have signed these contracts. It's significantly less money than some of these players should have received in a market like we've seen over the past couple of years. So for one, we got my man James Johnson signed a 4-year, $60 million contract to come back. Dion Waiters also a 4-year deal for $52 million, which is ridiculous that he's getting paid less money, yet he's a starter. Then we have Kelly Olynyk, 4-year, $50 million. And then we have my man Josh Richardson, who signed an extension for a 4-year, $42 million contract. And then when it comes to our expiring contracts, nothing too major here. Wayne Ellington is a guard that bounced around the league for quite some time. And then Udonis Haslem, he's going to retire as a Miami Heat. He's definitely not going nowhere else. And maybe this is his last year in the NBA. If so, shout out to my man Haslem. You loyal. You loyal. Trust me on that. You loyal. You smart. Now with that being said, let's transition to the depth chart. In the backcourt, we have Goran Dragic and Dion Waiters. At the 3, we have Winslow. At the 4, I'm putting Kelly Olynyk as a starter, and I'll explain later on in the video. And then Whiteside at 5. Coming off the bench, we got a couple of good players off this bench as well. I like the bench. We got Tyler Johnson, Magruder, Wayne Ellington, Jay Rich, James Johnson, and shout out to my man Bam. Shout out to my man Bam, because I saw a couple highlights of his. Not going to sit there and say I'm an expert on his play, but I definitely saw some fairly impressive things with Bam, and so much so I wouldn't be surprised if he receives a pretty significant role towards the end of the season as he gets more accustomed to the NBA level. And with that being said, that's a huge reason why I think this team has this special sauce to push some of these other teams in the Eastern Conference to their limits. So take the time out and look at this roster real quick. Both perimeter players who can kind of switch on multiple positions, who are really athletic, in Winslow and Jay Rich. Hopefully both of them can add a 3-ball to their game within the near future. Shout out to my man Magruder. Due to the fact that Winslow, Dion Waiters, and even Jay Rich at certain point in times in last year's season, due to them suffering from injuries, Magruder actually received a pretty significant amount of minutes and received a larger role than he was probably expecting in his rookie season. And for the most part, he didn't disappoint. Some people make the argument that he actually impressed, especially because how consistent he was from behind the arc. And also the same thing can be said about Tyler Johnson as well, which is something that was extremely interesting last year. But if there is one player that I have to specifically point out, and one player that I want to see a huge jump in this next upcoming season, and probably the key to the success of this organization, it is my man Young Whiteside, which is why he is our spotlight player of the day. Hassan Whiteside is a 7-foot beast with Hall of Fame rim protector badges, and quite honestly, he really stole a lot of people's hearts, even mine. A few years ago with some of his charismatic antics off and on the court, especially with some of his interviews trying to explain to people and convey everybody who slept on him and kicked him off their team and how he used to play in a YMCA league. He's been proving a lot of people wrong. Hassan Whiteside over the past couple of seasons has grown as an individual player, not just as a shot blocker, but also as a player who can be a go-to option on the offensive end. He doesn't necessarily have a face-up game just yet, but I see him working on it, and kudos to you. He got a little float game here and there, got a couple post moves as well. Again, not on Hakeem level, and his float game could do a little bit more touching up on, but last year he averaged 17 points, 14 rebounds, which did lead the league, along with 2 blocks. So for the most part, Hassan Whiteside is your stereotypical big man. Stays roughly around the rim, gives you somewhere around 15 to 20 points on a night-to-night basis, grabs the rebounds that he needs to grab, and he's a rim protector. Now, by me saying that, I'm not trying to marginalize what he does on the floor. What I'm actually trying to do is highlight how pivotal his play is for this team. Last year, the Miami Heat, even though not really having any other elite level defenders outside Hassan Whiteside, finished 5th in defensive rating according to Basketball Reference. And not only that, Hassan Whiteside, like I pointed out, offensively has slowly but surely gotten better, to the point where last year he had moments where he was a consistent 20-point scorer, which is something, if he can achieve, I definitely can see be a massive problem for multiple Eastern Conference teams. If you take the time out, step back, and look at the rest of the Eastern Conference, quite honestly, tell me who is at the 5 that is ever going to be able to stop Hassan Whiteside if he can be a consistent option. We're talking about the Cleveland Cavaliers, who are contemplating at putting Kevin Love at the 5. Valanciunas, I guess, and maybe Ibaka at the 5 for Toronto is okay. Al Horford, absolutely not. Marcin Gortat, absolutely not. Thon Maker, no. Then you have Drummond and Dwight Howard possibly, but neither one of them, in my opinion, are strong enough to get physical with Hassan Whiteside on a consistent basis. So in my opinion, young Whiteside is at a massive advantage when it comes to every other big man in the Eastern Conference. But the only way that the Miami Heat will be able to take advantage of the situation that they're given with Hassan Whiteside is if they, one, space the floor and turn Hassan Whiteside into basically the first or second option on the team. And I feel as if, and I know this is a big if, but if Hassan Whiteside does become a more prominent option on this team, he can definitely be a 20 to 23 point scorer on this roster. And with that being said, let's transition to our Twitter question of the day. Shout out to my man Eddie, loyal subscriber and a loyal follower on my Twitter, and he asked, which Miami do you expect to see next season? The one that went 11-30 wins or the 30-11 wins? Now, the reason why I picked this question out and the reason why it's such a great question is because even I was trying to figure out what exactly happened within that stretch of games for them to turn around their entire season. What trend happened? What switch was flipped? What exactly did the organization do to change the outcome of games so significantly? First of all, I do want to give a special shout out to Eric Spoelstra because I do feel as if he doesn't get enough credit. Even back when LeBron was on the team, they were winning games, a lot of people just write him off. But the one thing that I noticed from my research and what I was able to gather is that Eric Spoelstra was basically put in a situation in which he had to make a massive change. What they decided to do was play some small ball, and when I say play some small ball, I mean they had 3 guards out there with Luke Babbitt playing the power forward position. What this did for the team is add spacing to the floor, which made it much more easier for them to score and basically turn their entire season around. In the beginning of the season, between October and December, the Miami Heat was only scoring 98 points per game compared to their stretch in January through April. They were scoring well over 100 points, which was above league average. But the thing that really caught my eye is not just the field goal percentage, not just 3-point percentage, but the amount of shots that they were actually attempting. In the early parts of the season, even though, yes, they scored less points, shot worse percentages, they were attempting more shots, which again is remarkable. And so when it comes to the stretch between January and April, like I stated before, that's when they ran their small ball lineup. Josh Richardson, ironically enough, suffered from an injury in the beginning of this stretch, and they went small ball. And once they went small ball, had 3 guards out there. Goran Dragic was phenomenal when it comes to his efficiency. I'm talking about stretches where he was shooting 50% from the field and nearly 50% from behind the arc while still being able to score somewhere between 17 to 20 points. minutes, which is a huge reason why I think Kelly Olynyk is the best option at that power forward position. Being able to space the floor out at the 4, he doesn't necessarily have to come in and give you, 20 points per game, but again, you just have to have a threat at that power forward position, space the floor out for Hassan Whiteside and some penetration, and there you go. And because of their newfound identity, I do believe the Miami Heat might be a little bit more successful than I think a lot of people are anticipating. But regardless of where they finish in the standing, if you are a team that really doesn't have any answer for Hassan Whiteside, it's definitely going to be a problem. And when you have other players on the perimeter who may lack on the defensive end, however, they're very efficient when it comes on the offensive side of the ball, especially when it comes to spacing the floor, you could run into some problems with this team. I like this organization. I like their bench. I like their depth. I like some of their rotations, especially at the forward position. Shout out to my man James Johnson. I didn't really get to talk about you in this video, but I like him as well. And if they run up against certain teams in the playoffs, I could definitely see them having some upsets. So with all that being said, tell me what you think about the Miami Heat in the comment section below. Goran Dragic, Dion Waiters, Young Whiteside, and the rest of the organization. Tell me where you expect, Kelly Olynyk to play and things of that nature. Shout out to my man Bam as well. And also make sure you hit the like button, subscribe as well. Hit that notification bell if you want to be updated consistently when I upload on a day-to-day basis. And with that being said, I will see you all tomorrow. Peace.